Hello, everyone, and welcome to my channel. Thanks for tuning in today. I had a request recently to give a little bit more information about the Reformed Liturgy of the Hours or Divine Office. It's also called Christian Prayer now, is like the official title of the books when you go to find them to purchase. Sorry if I'm shaking the camera. I'll try to stop. Anyway, so yeah, it's after the reform in the 70s of these, there were quite a few changes. The Latin names for the hours were not so commonly used because now they were named in the vernacular, like morning prayer, evening prayer, night prayer, office of readings, daytime prayer, whereas before those all had Latin names. So as I go through, I will tell you what the old Latin name was for it. And it's still referred to that sometimes, like Vespers was evening prayer, or Matins was the office of readings, Lauds, morning prayer. We can go through all of those. But I just thought it would be kind of nice, like we'll pretend that you just bought your book and I have my book, and we'll sit down and we'll just look through it like we were sitting down together, and I'll show you everything that's in here so you kind of get your head on about it, because it's just a fat book and there's a lot to know. Like, I was really kind of overwhelmed when I first started praying this, because not only are there so many sections to the book, but there's a real method, an exact method to follow when you're praying. And there's just all these terms that I'd never heard before, like antiphon and responsory and things like that. I was just like, well, I mean, I kind of like feel like I should know what that is, but I don't really know. And so anyway, it's not going to be Greek to you by the time we're done. At least today we'll go through the book. We'll see if we have time to go through the method of prayer, but at least we'll get you oriented in this video, and then we can do future videos today. I will also tell you that there are two versions of the Christian prayer book. There's a 1 volume, which is what this is, and then there's a 4 volume version, which comes in a whole set. This is the first volume of that. So it says 1 on the spine because there's 4. What do you know? Anyway, so you're probably like, well, how can they fit the same thing in 1 volume that they have in 4 volumes? It's like, well, they kind of truncated to get it to fit in the 1 volume. And that's kind of like the layman's book, because one thing that Vatican II really wanted to promote was making the faithful, the lay people, know that they could participate in the divine office. It wasn't just supposed to be restricted to the clergy anymore, but they realized it needed a little bit of reform anyway. And then some more adaptations that can make it a little easier for communal use, because ideally after the Mass, in fact, after the Mass, the Liturgy of the Hours is the next biggest part of the liturgical life of the church. It's like, the hinges on which the whole day of the church turns. And clergy and nuns and monks, they're obligated to say at least certain hours of it every single day. And so laity aren't obliged, but they're encouraged to participate. And it's just a great representation of the universality of the church to be able to have priests and religious and lay people come together and pray this as one community, and everyone knows what's going on. Everyone can participate. I have seen this many, many times, and it's just such a wonderful experience. When my family learned to pray the Liturgy of the Hours, I was about 12. Up to then, I had, I knew the rosary, and we did pray as a family pretty regularly, but we couldn't seem to get the daily rosary to stick. It was like, what is the deal? Everyone's like, pray the rosary every day. We're like, yeah, we kept trying and trying. It's like we prayed in the car. Sometimes we prayed at home, but it just couldn't seem to like gel as a daily thing. So we found the Liturgy of the Hours. Someone taught us how to pray it, and we were so excited, because all of a sudden we were able to do it as a family every single day. Morning prayer very faithfully, plus evening prayer and night prayer most days. And then we started to add in the daytime prayers, and then the office of readings. And we were like, wow, this is so cool. I mean, it made it so that my mom even wrote up a rule of life, like an horarium. We even posted it by our front door. So if people rang the bell and we didn't come right away, it's because we were probably downstairs praying our family prayer. So it would tell you at different times of the day what we were going to be doing. And so we had a whole schedule, and it just revolved around the hours of prayer. And then the different periods of the day that were broken up by the Liturgy of the Hours, the different offices were for different things, chores or rest or recreation or, different, all kinds of stuff. So it really takes care of all your needs, and it was really great. And we lived like that until we girls all grew up and got married. So it was pretty cool. And I just really encourage families to learn to pray this together, because even if you only do 1 hour a day, I mean, it's just so worth it. It's amazing how that scripture starts to sink into your mind, and it just starts surfacing over the day as you're doing things. You're like, wow, I never thought I'd memorize it like this. It's so exciting. So it really enriches your prayer life and, your family life. And like, my little brother grew up hearing these all the time. He could like recite them by the time he was 3 or 4. So he would sit there and we would say like part of the Psalm verse, and then we would just stop and wait for him to finish it. So that's how he participated before he was old enough to read. And he was just like, yeah, I do this all the time. Like, one time we were sitting in a parish mission and the priest was talking about, religious and priests who pray the Liturgy of the Hours, every day. And my little brother leans over to my dad and he goes, is he talking about us? And so, yeah, he was about 4 or 5. So we're like, you kind of grew up in a bubble because you never knew anything else. Like, his whole life, it's been like that. So my dad said one time, he's like, man, I can sing the words from almost any 70s or 80s song from when I was in high school and college. And he's just like, why did that stick in my brain? Because I was so impressionable. And now that's what I remember. And he's like, man, I wish I'd been filling myself with stuff like this, so that this is what would be the first thing that would come to my mind. And I would be able to just recall it on the spot. And, what a gift that would be. So that's a gift my parents tried to give us. And I hope to give to my children if I can ever get, regular and consistent about praying it again, now that I have kids. But anyway, there's hope. Another thing, there's resources online. If you can't get the books for some reason, or you just live on your phone, you can get these. Divineoffice.org is one place. Every day they post all the different offices, and you can go online and just read them right there, or they'll have audio recordings so you can listen to it while you're working out or driving to work or whatever. So that has really helped me get it in when I didn't have time to sit down and just read it uninterrupted. And then, if you're listening to it, your kids hear it, they're still going to get the benefit of that, even if you're not officially sitting down with your book. But I do recommend sitting down with the book because it's a lot more meditative. So anyway, that's a long introduction. But so let's look at the 1 volume, because it's a little bit simpler. And then I'll tell you after, kind of as I'm going through, like, what makes it different from the 4 volume. And then we'll look at the 4 volume, one of the volumes, and we'll just kind of compare them. So what's different. Like, if you're going to go buy your own set, what do you want to start out with? The 1 volume or the 4 volume? And, this is definitely good to get your feet wet with. The 4 volume just has like more expanded offices. So anyway, so Christian prayer, this is what it looks like on the outside. The tabs, I recommend getting some sticky tabs, because there are places in this book you'll be flipping back to all the time. And so, and because it's so fat, it kind of helps to have those. And this is the spine here. You can get ribbon markers for these books. I honestly, there's usually like a 5 ribbon marker. That's kind of the standard that you'll get. And they tuck in the top of the book. And then you just fold them down into the pages where you want them to mark your spots. I didn't feel like 5 was enough, so I got an 8 ribbon marker. And actually, wait, is it 8? Is it 10? Oh, it's 8. Okay, I was right. Anyway, so I got the 8 ribbon marker. They are a lot fatter and longer, which is kind of annoying. But anyway, it's nice to have the ribbons, if you can remember what they all are for. So ribbons, sticky tabs, they'll be good for you. And they also sell covers for these books. Some of them are just like really cheapy ones that just kind of stick on, and then they'll have an inside and a back pocket. So you can store holy cards or bookmarks. Then they have nice zipping ones so that they'll have extra pockets and things like that. So the zipping ones are really nice, but I don't have one. I do have a cover that my sister made for me out of an antelope hide, but I took it off so you could see what the actual book looks like. Anyway, so it actually was just for fun. I will show you. Okay, so this is the cover that she made for me. This is the inside. Oh, this is the outside. I'm looking at the inside. And so she stitched it, all the way around. I wanted mine just au naturel, but she made different colors for each of the families per book so that we could identify whose was whose. But she tried dyeing some of them, and for weeks, my mom would have blue hands after she put her book down because, the dye didn't want to stay for a while. So we figured that out eventually, wore off the dye, and then they were great. So we still use them. Anyway, so you open the book and it will show you these graphics are kind of weird. I have to say I'm not a fan of the graphics, but they don't do anything or make or break anything. Just tells you the title, cover page. Then it's got the contents. It'll tell you, where to find everything in here. And then it has the decree from the Sacred Congregation for Divine Worship from when the Liturgy of the Hours was reformed and, kind of promulgating the new edition. And then it has an abridged version of the general instruction of the Liturgy of the Hours. You will find the full printed version in volume 1 of the 4-volume, because that's, anyway, I don't know why they only put it in volume 1, but I guess because they're like, start here. And so you can read the whole thing. It's really worth a read. It's really beautiful. And it just explains why the divine office is there, why it's important, and how important it is to participate in it, and where it came from and all this great stuff. Also kind of the particulars of like how to pray it, the gestures and postures you're supposed to assume at different times, and how you can actually combine the Liturgy of the Hours and Mass on certain occasions and how to do that. So that's really useful. Anyway, so after that comes the Roman calendar. So it'll show you kind of like, here's where the feasts fall for the next 20 years. And then it'll take you through the calendar month by month, January, February. It'll show you all the different saints' days so that you can just kind of look at that and go, oh, look at that. And it'll tell you if it's a solemnity, a memorial, or a feast. And depending on what it is, it's kind of like observed a little more prominently or less prominently. So it would be a memorial. There's like optional memorials are kind of like, this is there if you want to observe it, this saint today, but you don't have to. Then there's memorials that must be observed. And so then, you would always do those prayers at the end of whatever office you're praying. And then there's feasts, which are a little bigger deal, and they have more of their own special prayers and readings. So then solemnities are the top. Every Sunday is a solemnity. So this kind of grade replaces the classes of the feasts that once were. They used to have like first class feast, second class, third class, I think fourth class. I think there were 4 classes. And so they thought this would be a little nicer to give them different titles and maybe make that a little clearer for people to understand. So solemnities are kind of like, it's like another Sunday. So every holy day is also a solemnity, but not every solemnity is a holy day of obligation. Some of them are just like principal feasts that are observed in a solemn way. And so they have like their whole office will be special to that day and that feast, which is a solemnity. Sorry. I'm using that word too much. Now I'm going to confuse you. Anyway, so just so you know, so optional memorial, obligatory memorial, feast, and solemnity. That's kind of how that goes. So anyway, so they walk you through the whole year and they tell you all that wonderful stuff. And then you get to this little tiny section that's general principles of reciting the office. So it's just a few pages of giving you a little bit of instruction to kind of get you going. And then it tells you the format of the offices. There's a little page there. So you're kind of like, oh, I'm starting to get the hang of this. And then the proper of seasons comes. And this is where it starts with Advent and it goes all the way through the seasons of the church year, Advent, and then it'll have Lent and Easter and Pentecost. And then it kind of stacks up all the solemnities at the end, like Corpus Christi and Trinity Sunday and Christ the King. And then it has all the Sundays of ordinary time, one after the other, all the way through, just to kind of, so they put all the kind of the fun, special stuff in the beginning, and then they put the ordinary time at the end of that section, the proper of seasons. And so what you'll borrow just a few things from this section as you're going through the book. I'll explain how that works later, but proper of seasons, good to know. Okay. Then we're going to move on through here. It's long. You get through the proper of seasons and here you are at the ordinary. Let's find you that page. It's another one of those lovely illustrations. Anyway, and the ordinary takes you through a little bit instructional walkthrough of each hour of the day. And it gives you printed these certain canticles that you will use every day at different hours, like 1 or 2 that you're going to use every day for morning prayer, 1 you use every day for evening prayer, 1 you use every day Do they have the night prayer one in here too? Oh no, they just print the night prayer one in its own section. So, but then it has like the dismissal and the introductory rites. And so it kind of, gives you some instructions. That's why it's red text. It's, as they say the black, do the red. So this has some red. So that's the ordinary, kind of like your little instructional interlude. And that's where most of my tabs are, because I would flip back to those canticles every day when I'm doing, the canticle of Zechariah in the morning, the canticle of Mary at evening prayer, and also the invitatory, which is always the first office of the day that you do. It can either be the office of readings or morning prayer. And so whichever one of those you do first, you do the invitatory before that office. If you're just using this book, you're probably not really diving into the office of readings all the way yet, because they have some of the office of readings, but it's really abridged. They have the full morning prayer though. And so I would recommend this as like your starter book if you just want to get your feet wet again. And then I would say just start out with your invitatory before morning prayer. Do morning prayer and evening prayer and night prayer. Start with those three. I would really recommend that, because those are kind of like morning prayer and evening prayer are definitely the two hinges on which the day turns. As a priest told me one time, he's like, if you can't get any other hours in, try to get those in, because those are the biggies. So anyway, so there's my spiel on that. So the next part of this goes after the ordinary into the 4-week Psalter. So that's over here. They're showing you that. And this is, the Psalter is where you have the Psalms, the set of Psalms that you pray every day for morning prayer and then for evening prayer. And in the old days, the old divine office had, in a week, you would pray the entire Psalter, all the Psalms from the book of Psalms. But in the revised version, the Reformed Liturgy of the Hours, they made it so that they spread all the Psalms out over 4 weeks. So you do get them in. There were a few that they left out, and they explain that. I think it might be in the general introduction that they left a few of them out because of the curses that they contained. I don't know what to think about that. But anyway, I was like, it wasn't up to me, and I'm sure they were doing their best, so I'm not going to worry about it. But anyway, anyway, if you want to look that up, you can go find out what it was all about, But anyway, so pretty much every psalm in the Bible is in here, and you're going to get through them in a 4-week cycle. So there's also there's this little book. They call it the Ordo, and it's just this little tiny white booklet that every year they reprint them. Whatever company you buy these from, you should be able to get the Ordos from too. So it'll be for the liturgical year, Advent to Advent of, this year it would be 2022, 2023. And it will tell you every day of the calendar year, the pages that you need to be on in your Liturgy of the Hours book. And it'll have them for the 1 volume and for the 4 volume, depending on which one you're using. It'll have them both printed in there, so you can just reference that. And so that book will tell you which week of the Psalter you should be on. So that's really handy. Another thing is, if you don't have one of those books, you can go to divineoffice.org, and at the top of there, find your day of the week, whatever that you're on. And at the top of the page, before they start the prayer for that hour, they'll tell you the page numbers there too. So you can be like, oh, if I was going to do this in my book, here's where I go. So for when you're first starting out praying the Liturgy of the Hours, you'll want to figure out which week of the Psalter you're on, so you know where you're going to start out. This is, so it has week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. And it's kind of funny because it says at the beginning, this threw me so much. Sundays are special, okay? And solemnities, they have an evening prayer 1 and an evening prayer 2. Evening prayer 1 is the vigil, and you're starting to anticipate the feast, the night before. So it's kind of like, this is weird, because it says Sunday evening prayer 1, but you actually pray that on Saturday night. And it took me so long to get used to that, because I thought, this is like cheating. They should just say Saturday evening prayer, and then of course we know it's for Sunday, but they want to be technical, and it's important to be technical sometimes. So anyway, so just remember that, big feasts, they really start the night before. The church observes vigils, and she does it in the Liturgy of the Hours too. So you'll do evening prayer 1 the night before the big feast or the Sunday, and then you'll do, morning prayer, and then you'll do evening prayer 2 for that Sunday or solemnity. So that's just some lingo. The rest of the days are simple. It's just Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, except Saturday only ever has morning prayer, because its evening prayer is Sunday evening prayer 1. So I hope that makes sense. So I'm going to skip you through the Psalter. to the next section that we have. The next section that we have is for daytime prayer. So this is when you want to go bonus and do some more praying. These were, okay. So let's see. So remember, morning prayer used to be called Lauds, and Vespers was evening prayer. So then the daytime prayers were called Terce, Sext, and Known. And now they're called Midmorning, Midday, and Midafternoon. So they have one set in here for the week: Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And they have a set right here in the beginning of current Psalms, as they say. So it's like, here's your special set for Sunday, your special set for Monday. And then at the end of this little section, they have this thing called, after the week section, they have this thing called the complementary psalmody for mid-morning, midday, and mid-afternoon. So what you do with this is there's only one set of current Psalms for each day. So you would pick one of those 3 hours, mid-morning, midday, or mid-afternoon, that maybe the one you're sure you're going to get to. And that's the one you do your current Psalms for. So you do that, the ones under the day title, Monday, or I guess today's Thursday. So you do Thursday's current Psalms, whenever you decide you're going to do it, but you definitely want to get those in. And then if you get to do other of the daytime hours, then you'll use the complementary psalmody, which there's only one set of each. So boy, you memorize these fast. Anyway, so they have the mid-morning series, and then they have the midday and the mid-afternoon. And after you're done with your little psalmody, because here in the complementary psalmody, they only have Psalms. So when you're done with this, you'd go back to whatever day it is. So we'll go to Thursday. And then they have these little things that say mid-morning, midday, and mid-afternoon. So whatever hour you're praying after you're done with your Psalms, either your current Psalms or your complementary Psalms, then you go back to here from the day, Thursday, and you do the reading and the short little responsory, and then the final prayer, and then the conclusion is always the same. At the daytime hours, you always say, "Let us praise the Lord and give him thanks." So that's always your conclusion. So that's how you're like getting in your special little reading and responsory and prayer for each of the hours for that particular day, even if you're using the complementary psalmody for the other hours that you're doing. Okay, I hope that made sense. And obviously, if you have questions, please leave them in the comments below, and I will respond to you as soon as I possibly can. So after the daytime section comes night prayer. So again, night prayer only has 1 week cycle, Sunday through Saturday. But again, this is my favorite ever. Okay, after evening prayer 1 on Sundays and solemnities, which is basically Saturday. So that's the first one that they print in here is Saturday's night prayer. Or if you're doing a solemnity, then even if a solemnity is on a Tuesday or a Friday or whatever, then you would do evening prayer, night prayer for after evening prayer 1, and then night prayer for after evening prayer 2, because it's a special day. And then the next day you just go back to whatever day of the week you're on. Okay. And then these are for Sundays too, Saturday and Sunday. Okay. And you go through, and this just has one psalm, a reading, a responsory, and then it has the canticle of Simeon. I'm like, brain freeze. Anyway, the canticle of Simeon. So you pray that every day at night prayer. You pray the canticle of Mary every day at evening prayer. The canticle of Zechariah every day at morning prayer. And it's really cool. Like you think it would get boring, but it really doesn't get boring. Those are just really important. They're just really important pieces of scripture to know. So they're definitely some of the ones you want to memorize. So anyway, and this one is short. I mean, it's like 6 lines, the canticle of Simeon. And then a prayer, and then the conclusion, which is a different blessing than you pray at the other hours. So it's special for night prayer. And then at the end of night prayer, you do like an antiphon to the Blessed Virgin Mary, like a seasonal hymn or something to her. And they have a little section for that at the end of the week, which I put a tab on because every day at night prayer, I would flip there and need one of these. So they have them in English, the 4 seasonal Marian antiphons, which go way back in church history. The Salve Regina, which is the Hail Holy Queen, they have them printed first in English and then in Latin. The Salve Regina, Hail Holy Queen is the Marian antiphon assigned to ordinary time. They don't print that in the book. They just kind of let you pick and do whatever one you want. But traditionally, that's how it was. Salve Regina for ordinary time. And then Loving Mother of the Redeemer is Alma Redemptoris Mater. And that one was for Advent and Christmas season. And the last day you would do it would be February 2nd, the Feast of the Presentation. And then starting February 3rd, you would start doing the Ave Regina Caelorum, which it's funny. They actually don't have a translation for that one here. They only have the Latin, but they do have the Latin. So anyway, so that one you would do all through Lent because Easter Sunday comes, or the Easter Vigil, and you would start doing Regina Caeli, the Queen of Heaven Rejoice. And they have that one in Latin and English here too. And that one is just for the Easter season through Pentecost. And then you go back to the Salve Regina for ordinary time. So that's pretty fun. Like, it's like the year is divided into quarters and you're going to get to sing this one, for however long, and then you'll get a new one. Anyway, so they have the Hail Holy Queen, Loving Mother of the Redeemer, and Regina Caeli, the Queen of Heaven, translated here. And then they have the Hail Mary, which seems kind of random because they don't have it in Latin on the other page, but they have the other Marian antiphon that I told you about. So anyway, whatever, but it's there. It's another option. So they're all legitimate options and you're not bound to do any of them at a particular time. But I always like to know, where it all came from and how to do it, so it's extra cool. Anyway, so after that, that's like the last little, that's like an appendix to the night prayer section because that's what you use it for. And then the next section is the Proper of Saints. And that takes you through January, all the way through December and the end of the year. And it has the prayers and a little biography of each saint or feast that you're celebrating. So it has a little biography and tells you like what it is, a memorial, a feast, or a solemnity up here. If it doesn't have, some of them, like you'll see it'll print memorial right underneath. That's an obligatory memorial. It means this memorial cannot be ignored. You have to do something to observe this. Okay. And so then here's the stuff. But sometimes it'll have like St. Blaise. There's nothing printed under his, which means that's an optional memorial. So that took me a while to figure out. So now that's a hack. You don't have to figure it out for yourself. Usually if it's just a memorial, they'll have a special antiphon that you'd pray before the Canticle of Zechariah and before the Canticle of Mary, and then a special final prayer for every hour of the day that you're praying that day. And that's usually what they have for memorials. For feasts, they have a little more. Like here's the Chair of St. Peter. They'll have more antiphons. They'll have a special reading and responsory. They'll have special intercessions, a special prayer. And they'll do that for, morning and evening prayer. And then solemnities is like the whole thing. They have the whole thing. And then you'd go do special psalms for that day from another section that we're going to talk about next. So anyway, so the Proper Saints is fun. So you kind of keep your ribbon moving through that every day when you're like, oh yeah, well, we did him. So now we're going to turn the page and get ready for the next one. And you just keep checking that one. And of course, they're adding new saints to the calendar all the time. So when you buy your book, you're not going to buy one of these every year. You're going to buy one and then they'll put out little like appendix supplements with the new propers for the new saints. And I think that comes out every year. And I've seen them. They're like a little red booklet. So you could have your little white Ordo booklet that tells you, what you're celebrating every day and which pages to go to. And then you have the little red booklet that tells you all the saints you don't have in your book and all the special prayers and antiphons for them. So anyway, but if you don't have it, it's not like, it's not a huge deal because I think you're only obligated, if you're obligated at all, to pray the ones that are in your book. But, the newer ones are a bonus, especially if they add some biggies. So you get through December. Let's see. All right. Oh, here we go. The Commons. This is the next section. Oh, there's Our Lady. That's probably one of the nicest ones they have in here. Okay. So the Commons, this is kind of a funny term, but they have, for special occasions, special feasts and solemnities, in the Proper of Saints, they'll refer you to the Common of the Blessed Virgin, or the Common of the dedication of a church, or the Common of Apostles, like to get your psalms for the day, because they'll have special sets that are themed according to what you're celebrating that day. So it just starts out and they have them all in here, and they'll tell you the page numbers when you need to use them so you know where to go to get them. But they'll have them for evening prayer 1, morning prayer, and evening prayer 2. And so they have the dedication of a church, and then they have the common of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and then they have, let's make sure I'm not, common of apostles, and then they have a common of martyrs. They'll have like some things they'll specify. They'll say for one martyr or for several martyrs. So then it's like you do the one that's appropriate to who you're celebrating that day. See, it's so customized. It's so fun. Anyway, and then, common of several martyrs comes first, and then the common of one martyr. Common of pastors for like bishops and priests. Common of holy men. Common of holy women for lay people, saints. Let's see. I'm sorry, my fingers are kind of slimy. It's cold, and I'm sitting in my garage, so I don't wake up my kids, because nap time is when I get things done. So here I am, but it's winter out. It started snowing yesterday. So anyway, I wish I could share it with you, but it might be too distracting to have snow falling in the background. Anyway, here, let's see. So we have, and then there's a little one that is for religious. So if you had, they might refer you to the common of holy women or something, but then they might be like, oh, because she was holy woman, but she wasn't a martyr and she wasn't a pastor or something. So then they'll be like, but she was a nun. So let's go over here and do this one antiphon for the religious, or something. But they'll tell you what you need to do. It's all printed in there, the little red instructions for those who worked for the underprivileged, for teachers. So those are all the little special sections that they have at the end of that. And then they have the Office for the Dead, which you will pray every year for All Souls Day, November 2nd. But my understanding of this, and I should probably look into it more just to see, like, what are all the circumstances under which you can pray this? But my understanding is that whenever someone dies, any old time, basically, you can pray the Office of the Dead for them. You can do it any time of the year, even during the Easter season. And they'll have, like, after some of these prayers and stuff, a lot of times they'll have like an Alleluia in red brackets, because it's like, if it's Easter, say the Alleluia. If it isn't Easter, don't say it, but it's there, in case. So the Office for the Dead, it's pretty cool. They have the Office of Readings and the Office for morning prayer, evening prayer. Do they have it for night prayer? No, they just tell you to do night prayer from Sunday, and then they give you the page number. So that's kind of cool, because you can really do this anytime, like anytime that you need to do it, or you could do it as part of a funeral, like vigil, and then the funeral of the day of. I mean, it could be part of the devotions for that. It's cool because the Liturgy of the Hours, it's called liturgy because it's not just a devotion, even like the rosary or novenas or anything like that. It's actually liturgy. So that's why it ranks higher, and it's a bigger deal. And it's really cool when you're participating in the Liturgy of the Hours. You are literally joining hands in prayer with your brothers and sisters all over the world who are praying at the same time. Even if they're not praying the same office you're praying, it's from the same liturgy. And it's like, it just beefs up the body of believers so much. It's really cool. I mean, you're just like stepping into this wheel that's always turning of just like people like chanting praises to God in the middle of the night, all during the day. And it's so cool. Like, you don't have to be excluded from that just because you're not a nun or a monk. I mean, now it's really open to us, and it's pretty great. I will say, one of my favorite reforms that came out of Vatican II. Okay, so then we have the singing people. So this means this is the section for hymns. I will tell you, this is one reason I do like the volume 1, even though I kind of rely on the 4 volume more. Obviously, I have both. Because volume 1 has all their hymns under notation. So if you don't know them, you can like plink them out on the piano and learn them. But it's really annoying because the 4 volume only has the text printed. It'll tell you the melody, like the name of it or whatever, but it doesn't have the notes. And I'm like, I'm a musician. I like notes. And I think I basically learned every hymn in this because I was like, I want to know them all. And so it's cool because first it tells you the liturgical guide for hymns. Let me think about this. I'm thinking because at the beginning of morning and evening prayer every day, they'll suggest like, you could do this hymn or this hymn today. And then, and you can pick one. I mean, it just kind of helps you because then if you just follow the suggestions, then you'll pretty much get through all of those that are for those appointed hours within, the Psalter time. And that's nice. It helps you break it up, not have to be like, oh, should I just sing the same one every day for a week? I mean, you can. It's not like it's mandated, but anyway. But you can go here and you can look at, they have an Advent, Christmas section. They have them by feasts in order of like the liturgical year. So it goes from Advent through Pentecost. And then it has ordinary time, and it says morning prayer, and then it has mid-morning prayer hymns, midday hymns, mid-afternoon hymns, evening prayer hymns, night prayer hymns, and then it has solemnities, Trinity Sunday, Corpus Christi, Sacred Heart, and Christ the King. So it'll tell you like, these are all the good ones for those. And then it'll even have some for the proper of saints. Not every saint will have his own, but some of them do. Like St. Andrew's got one. St. Joseph has a couple. The archangels have a few. Triumph of the Cross, Francis of Assisi, All Saints, John the Baptist, Peter and Paul. So they got some fun ones. So you can just always check here, like, is there a special one? And if you don't know the melody, you can just recite it. You can just read the words and it counts. You don't have to sing it. But if you like singing, I like this one. Okay, then it has commons. It tells you for these commons, these are the hymns for these commons. And so you can pick one of those. And I don't know if you hate writing in books or not, but I did put like a pen dot by every one as I learned it. If I knew them, I was like, I'm just going to mark the ones I know so that it's easy to find them. And then I would see the ones I didn't know and be like, that's next, So I guess I didn't learn them all because there's a few in here that I didn't know. And then Office for the Dead, they've got a little thing at the bottom to tell you the hymns for that. So then they start you there's 184 hymns in here, and a lot of them are really good. One thing I like is they don't neuter the language. If it says he, it just says he. They didn't change it to them and us and friends and folk, and they didn't do that. So that's good. But I will say they have a couple hymns in here by Martin Luther, which I'm like, whatever. If it's in here, it's permitted. It's just that I don't sing all of those. Like I Am the Bread of Life. Yeah. But there's a lot of really good ones and some really cool old hymns that I never even heard or saw until I was praying the Liturgy of the Hours. So I got to learn them because I was exposed to them here. So there's lots of goodies in here. Anyway, you get through your hymn section. 185. I'm so sorry. There are 185 hymns. Anyway, then they have this little bonus section in the back that says music for the Liturgy of the Hours. And it shows you how you could sing the whole prayer from the beginning to the end. It has little tones for the introductory verses and the glorias and the psalms, like tones for the psalms. So you could, kind of like, you've heard those, like da 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 da. And so you would be able to sing them simply, the whole thing, because it also talks about that in the introduction to the Liturgy of the Hours, that the psalms are most, like they possess the most of their true character when they're sung. It's like singing the prayer of the church, the Mass and the Liturgy of the Hours. It's just the bomb. And the liturgical documents always make that point. It's just like, man, it's okay to just say it, do what you can, but singing is the it. And that's always what the church strives for in her vision is, that the faithful and the clergy would get together and sing these wonderful prayers at the church that, in the beginning they were sung. our Lord sang the liturgy in, the night he died. So we know that Jesus was singing the hymns the liturgical prayers, and we still can. And that's the best. And it really is. I've prayed this spoken many, many times with groups of people, and it's always cool. But I've also sung it like at sacred music conferences. They'll have, like the men on one side and the women on the other, and you chant, and it's so solemn and it's so beautiful. And it's like, it's challenging because you're learning these new tones and stuff, but it's just like, wow. And also I do have to say it's really cool when you have men singing and then women singing, this back and forth, like this giving and receiving. It's like, I don't know. It just makes you feel like you're truly yourself and you're really participating with people in such an awesome way. It's so cool. So anyway, if you ever get to do that, do it. You will not be sorry. Stumble along however much you have to. Even if you're just sitting there, feeling lost, it'll still do you good. So anyway, that whole section is kind of interesting. They say that these tones were adapted from the 8 Gregorian psalm modes. Like they're adapted from the modes, but there's more traditional Gregorian psalm tones that don't really sound like these. So the modes, modes are different from tones. There's like 8 traditional psalm tones, and then there's the 8 Gregorian modes. And the modes are kind of like the range in which a chant is set. and the sort of the sound of it, like which note does the chant most revolve around, and it gives it a really unique sound. And so there's 8 notes, in an octave. So there's 8 modes, because each note as a dominant factor in a melody will create a very certain mood. And they want those for different like seasons of the year and stuff to kind of give it more of a certain feel or flavor. But anyway, so some Benedictine that I don't know did a lot of these kind of adapted these psalm tones and stuff for you. So you can totally use them. But personally, I went digging for older stuff that was like previously in use, that was more like match the tones and stuff that are still used in the Mass and those propers and things. Because I was like, I kind of want it to sound the same. One thing I noticed about these is they're nice tones, but what I think this was probably done deliberately, that some of them actually have kind of this like Hebrewish Jewish sound to them, like melodically. It's really interesting. Like, I think that maybe was deliberate to kind of recall that the Jews were the first ones to sing these for centuries, and that they had their own ways of singing them. And so it kind of echoes that a little bit. It's like, it's new, but it's old. It's Gregorian, it's Jewish. It's kind of like, a little bit. So, I mean, that's hard to bring all that together. So he probably just did the best he could. Gerald OSB, or all these. Actually, there's a bunch of different guys in here, but I think that one guy did a lot of it. Anyway, so, use it if you want, but maybe I'll be able to provide resources later on in another video of where I found the psalm tones that my family used to sing the Liturgy of the Hours. Ultimately, there is a book called the Antiphonale Romanum, which had all the, it had the Divine Office printed under notation, like all the different tones in it, would delineate, like for this season of the year, you're going to use this mode for this office, for this psalm, because all the psalms are different and they all tell you a different story. So then they would assign different tones to those different psalms according to the mood of the psalm. So it's already done for you and it's really cool. The problem is that they've never yet, like, that was revised, the Antiphonale Romanum, but they never translated it into English. So I'm like, oh, darn. Like, if you pray that, you can, but it's in Latin. And it's like, okay. And I don't mind Latin. I mean, I love Latin. But it's just a lot for people to get, and I think even the instructions are in Latin. So that does make it a little bit tricky. So someday somebody will probably do an English translation, and then it'll just be right there. And if you want to sing it, you can sing it. There is also a book called the Mundelein Psalter. Their Meinrad psalm tones are what they use for that. And they have basically the whole English 1 volume Christian prayer with notation, so you can sing everything. And they'll print like the little psalm tone at the top, and then the text of the psalms is all pointed, so you know where to move following that little graph of music that they have at the top. And so those aren't based on the original Gregorian psalm tones. They're Meinrad psalm tones, which are, I mean, they're also venerable. I don't know as much about where those originated from. I used to. I'm sorry, I'm rusty on that. But anyway, they're good. And they're very dignified and stuff, and very simple. They're actually simpler than the Gregorian psalm tones. So it's very easy for people to start out singing that. Like, that's totally what I would use if I were doing like Sunday Vespers at my parish church and people wanted to sing it. I would take it out of the Mundelein Psalter. So that's a great place to go. My family uses that a lot for praying together when they want to sing the office. So after that whole section about, music for the Liturgy of the Hours, then they have the little baby Office of Readings section. And the Office of Readings is its own whole thing. And in the 4 volume, they have the Office of Readings in with morning prayer and evening prayer. Like, it's in the 4-week Psalter, and then they have it in the proper seasons. They have it all included in those. But in this book, they shortened it and they put it in like a supplement in the back. So you can get a taste of it, but you don't get every little thing. So that is one thing. The Office of Readings is really cool. And if you get to praying that, you'll definitely want the 4 volume. You can just get used to it a little bit in here. But anyway, so the Office of Readings has a 4-week Psalter because, it's its own hour. That's the Office of Matins. And that one would be either prayed... See, there was the hour of prime, which was suppressed after Vatican II. And that was sort of like, it was a minor hour. I mean, it was sort of little like the daytime prayer ones. And Matins was more substantial. So Matins would either be done after prime in the middle of the night, like the religious communities would get up at like midnight or 3 a.m. or something, and they would do one of these. And so my understanding is, I think that prime and then Matins would be prayed, or prime would just be prayed, and then they would get up kind of early and they would do Matins, and then they would do Lauds right after Matins. And if you do that, then you would do, so that if you do the office of readings before morning prayer, again, you do the invitatory psalm at the beginning of the office of readings, because the invitatory is always like the first thing that kicks off your day. So I guess prime was maybe more of a vigil hour, vigil office, kind of like telling you what was coming the next day, but it wasn't really part of that day's offices. If I'm wrong, somebody correct me. I don't know that much about prime. Sorry, because obviously I wasn't around for it. But anyway, so the 4-week Psalter for office of readings, they have your psalms, and it's always a set of 3 psalms, except for night prayer. There's only one psalm, like a long one, or 2 short ones. But every other hour, there's always 3 psalms that make up your Psalter for that hour. So they have their little Psalters Sunday through Saturday. And then at the end of each Psalter section, it'll say readings and prayer as in the proper seasons. Okay. So what that's indicating is that here you're going to flip past your 4 weeks of Psalter for the office of readings. And then they have these little sections. I'm sorry, I'm slow flipping. They have these little sections. First section is called biblical readings. And the next section is non-biblical readings. So with the office of readings, you always do your Psalter, and there's like a little verse at the end. And then you go do a long biblical reading. And there's a responsory at the end of that. And then you do a long non-biblical reading and a responsory after that, and then a final prayer. And those are just cool because they're just so packed and they're long. So you get to sit there and listen to all that and really meditate on it. And it's cool because the biblical readings are almost always from the day or the season. If you're in Advent, you'd flip back to the Advent section to get your readings for that. But then if there's any saints or fun feasts going on, they'll have a special non-biblical reading, like from their writings or from a life, like a biography of them or something. So it's always like, it would take you a long time to get through the whole cycle of office of readings and read every reading there was, because it's always, moving with whatever is being celebrated that day. And it's always changing, because so it's really cool. Here they just have kind of like these general sections in the one volume. It's like biblical readings, and they'll have like a little section like for the Christmas season, for the Lenten season, the Easter season. And so then you can just kind of go in there and pick one and read it. And then after that, they don't have the responsories. They just have the reading. And it's just kind of like this small section, for each. And then they'll have the non-biblical readings for the Christmas season, for the Advent seasons, or whatever. You go in here and you just pick one of these, and then you do that one, and then you'd go to wherever your prayer of the day is. It'd be from morning or evening prayer, because they're not printing them here. And you would do that as your final thing, and then the dismissal. Okay. So that's the deal here with the office of readings. Then they have some for like non-biblical readings for the commons, for like holy men, holy women, apostles, saints. So they'll tell you at the top, like this one would be for common of virgins. This one would be for common of the Blessed Virgin. And so you can still do them on the saints' days, and then you just do your non-biblical reading that's pertaining to the saint or the feast that you're celebrating there. So after that, so that's the end of what they have for the office of readings. And then they have this handy little poetry section. It's like religious poetry. It's beautiful. I have meditated on these a lot, memorized some of them. I don't know if they have like 20 different poems in here. They're cool. So just for fun, I guess, because they're not mandated for any of the hours. So it's just like a devotional aid. Then they have a 2-year cycle of scriptural passages for the office of readings. So if you want to do the proper full biblical reading for every day, you can look it up in your Bible and read it according to the feast or the day. And they have year 1, year 2. The way you do that is if it's an odd year, like 2021, 2023, you would always do year 1. If it's an even year, like this year, 2022, you do year 2. So odd years, you do year 1, even years, you do year 2. That's how you know. And that applies for Mass readings, for the weekday readings for daily Mass too. They have a year 1 and a year 2 option, so that you're always kind of like, it just keeps it fresh. So anyway, so they have that. And then they have an index of the Psalms. So if you're looking for a particular one and you want to know where it is in the book, you go back here and it'll tell you the page it's on. Index of canticles, index of biblical readings, index of non-biblical readings, and it goes by author, alphabetically by author. So you can look up whatever saint wrote the reading or whatever. And then they have a general index of hymns that's alphabetical. So if you're looking for a certain one and you just want to know what number it is, you can go there and find it. Then they have an alphabetical index of celebrations, like of the saints and feasts. So you can go look it up alphabetically. And then the acknowledgements, and you're done. There was an awful lot in there, wasn't there? I know, it's really full. Oh, but anyway, so that was your introduction to the Christian prayer book and everything that's in it. So now I'm just going to look at this, try to remember what I was going to tell you about the 1 volume or the 4 volume. So remember, this is volume 1 from the 4 volume set, which has, it's got, let's look. Okay, it's got the full general introduction to the Liturgy of the Hours and the whole apostolic constitution of Pope St. Paul VI when he promulgated the new edition of the Liturgy of the Hours. So it's got that in there, which the 1 volume doesn't have. It's the whole general instruction. And then it has, all the same indexes and instructional bits. It has, and then in its proper of seasons, and in the Psalter, instead of printing just morning prayer and evening prayer, morning prayer and evening prayer, morning prayer and evening prayer, it's always got the office of readings in there. Because remember, this is expanded. This is the full deal in this book. So you're not missing anything. And it always starts out, it'll have office of readings first, because they're presuming you're going to do that probably before morning prayer. Although you can really do it any time of the day, but they kind of prefer you do it before morning prayer, because it's always meant to be kind of a night office. So anyway, that's the ideal, but they understand it doesn't always work that way. So office of readings first, and then they have morning prayer stuff, and then they have evening prayer. Always night prayer is in its own section, even in the 4 volume. They don't put night prayer in here. Whoa, where's this going? All right. Oh, I forgot about this. In the proper seasons in the 4 volume, they have they have in the beginning, like I said, they don't print the music for the hymns, they just print the text. So right here, they have it by season. So in the beginning of the Advent section, in the proper of seasons, they'll have the text of all the different Advent hymns that you'll use, that you will need during Advent. And then it'll do that at the Christmas season and the Lenten season, the Easter season. Right in the beginning of the section, it'll print all the hymns that you'll want. And it'll tell you if they're like recommended for the office of readings, recommended for morning prayer, or recommended for evening prayer. So they'll kind of do that. So anyway, so yeah, the 4 volume is very much more sectioned. It's not just like, well, here's this, and then we cram this in an appendix and this in an appendix. It's like, it's more just laid out. Like, you're going to go through it and you're going to need all this stuff. So here we just printed it like this. And they also will repeat things, like when you're praying the Psalms, there's a little antiphon at the beginning. It's like a little short, like a line or two that's like a little meditation, and it sort of sets the tone for what you're celebrating that day or that hour before the psalm. So somebody reads the antiphon, and then everybody prays the psalm together. You say the glory be at the end of the psalm, and then you go back and say the antiphon again. In the 1 volume, the antiphon is only printed once at the beginning of the psalm, but in the 4 volume, they print it at the end. So you don't have to go like flip back if it's on another page or something and find it. You just read it in there. So some people really like that because it's reprinted and they don't have to flip. Anyway, so if you're one of those people, the 4 volume is for you. And I'm sorry, I'm a little bit rusty because I haven't used my 4 volume in a while. I'm trying to remember if they print the canticles every day in the Psalter. Let's look real quick, because you might not have to flip for those. Let's see. Sorry, bear with me here. I was going to record this video and then post it, and so it would be a little more edited and organized, but it wasn't working out. So I just thought I'll live stream it and you can all suffer with me. What is going on here? The proper of saints. No. I guess they don't print it. You're going to have to flip to that. This is probably so overwhelming. There's so much information about this. Anyway, so the proper of seasons is just like it is in the one volume. And then they have their the ordinary, just like in the one volume, with the instructions and the invitatory psalm. And the invitatory psalm gets like a standard antiphon every day, but that antiphon will change depending on the season. So it'll have a standard antiphon for all of Advent, and then like until the last week of Advent. Then it'll have a special one because there's like those last 8 days before Christmas that are kind of special. So then like a standard antiphon for Lent, a standard antiphon for Easter. But then during ordinary time, they'll print an antiphon in the 4-week Psalter at the beginning of whatever the first hour is for each day. They'll be like invitatory antiphon, and then they'll print one there. So you'd go to your antiphon and then you'd flip back to the ordinary to read your invitatory psalm. And there's one standard one, Psalm 95, a call to praise God, which is a great one. But they also offer you 3 others optionally if you want to like rotate them throughout the year. My family would do that. We'd have one for Lent and one for Easter, and we'd have a different one for Advent and Christmas. And then the rest of the year we'd use Psalm 95. So anyway, but you don't have to. I mean, you can just use the same one all the time if you want. So here's the ordinary with its little instructions. And one thing that's different in this, I don't think they have this in the ordinary of the one volume, is the Te Deum, which sometimes you use at the end of the Office of Readings for big feasts and stuff. So they have that printed in here. And more stuff for the Office of Readings than in the one volume, because obviously that's its own whole thing and they want you to know what you're doing. So then the instructions for morning prayer, then the canticle, instructions for evening prayer and the canticle, instructions for daytime prayer, which they didn't really do in the other one. They didn't have a section for it in the ordinary. They just had a little like paragraph at the top of the daytime prayer week itself, kind of telling you what it was all about. So this book is nicer. It kind of gives you a little more to go on. Anyway, so you get through that, and then you get to you get to the 4-week Psalter. That's after the ordinary. And there's your 4 weeks again. But lo and behold, oh, this one also starts out with Sunday evening prayer 1. So, yeah, it's kind of funny because when you get to the end of week 4 of the Psalter, there'll be Saturday morning prayer, and then it just ends. Because then you just flip back to the beginning of week 1, and you do, for Saturday night, you do evening prayer 1 for Sunday of week 1. So then you're in week 1 again, and you just keep going through and going back. So that's kind of cool. So they have evening prayer 1, and then they have the invitatory antiphon for Sunday the next day. If this is ordinary time, you'd use this. Otherwise, you do the special ones that they printed in the ordinary. And then they have the Office of Readings, in case you do that one first. And then they have morning prayer after that. And then they have evening prayer after that. Correction. I'm rusty on this because I haven't used the 4 volume for a while. After morning prayer, they print daytime prayer in the 4-week Psalter. See, they didn't break it up in all these sections like they did in the one volume. So daytime prayer gets in there. They put the current psalmody in here for each day. And there's a 4-week cycle for daytime prayer for the current psalms of daytime prayer. Whereas in the one volume, there's only a 1-week cycle, which is week 1 of the 4 weeks that they have in the 4 volume. So again, there's more goodies there if you're going to do daytime prayer, because then you get more psalms, which I forgot about because I was so used to praying out of the one volume. I didn't have a 4 volume set for so long. Getting that was pretty fun. So anyway. Okay, so they do daytime prayer, your current psalmody, and at the end of that, they tell you at the other hours, the complementary psalmody is used, page 1191 or whatever. And then you'd come back here to do your reading, prayer, and, dismissal verse that they have for every day. Okay. And then evening prayer 2, or evening prayer, depending on what day you're on. Evening prayer 2 is only on Sunday. Everybody else just gets plain old evening prayer. And then it goes. So the 4-week Psalter takes you through. All right, we got this now. If there's an evening prayer one, it has an evening prayer one. Then the office of readings, morning prayer, daytime prayer, evening prayer. So we'll flip through here. We'll get all through week 4. And then the night prayer section. Night prayer. How does that look in this book? We don't have as many illustrations in this book. Oh, what a deprivation. Okay. Oh, so at the beginning of their night prayer section, they have just conveniently printed all of your night prayer hymns. I didn't point that out, that in the 4-week Psalter section, before each of those, major hours, office of readings, morning prayer, daytime prayer, evening prayer. Oh, wait. Did they do that for daytime prayer? They must have. Yes. So for each of those, they have printed the hymn that they would suggest, instead of the one volume just says, how about you sing this number or this number hymn? And then you flip to the hymn section. And here it's how about you sing this one? And they just print the text right there. So then you don't have to flip. See, there's a little less flipping in this book. That's another benefit. So all the night prayer hymns are right here. So you just go which one do I want to do? And you do that. The hymn is you always have your opening rites, your, opening verses. And it's God, come to my assistance. Lord, make haste to help me. Then you say the glory be. That's typically what you do. There, different hours have different things, but morning and evening prayer and night prayer, you always start with those. You know what? Yes, I'm going to qualify that later though, when I'm giving you the actual instruction. And then, you just do that little short thing, and then you would do your hymn, and then you're going to go into your Psalms. Okay. And so then they have, Saturday night through Friday, their week of night prayer, their whole thing right there. And then after night prayer of Friday, they printed the Marian antiphons like they have in the other one. So they're all in here, just the same ones that are in the one volume. And then here they have now, they put the complimentary psalmody for daytime prayer over here, but they told you the page number earlier, so you could just flip here and find it. So that is something you'd want to tab to if you're going to do those hours. And then proper of saints. That's kind of funny. I'm sorry. I'm their proper of saints starts in November, which is funny. I mean, often Advent starts in November, so I guess that makes sense. And the one volume book, though, the proper saint starts with January. So just keeping things new and different, I guess. So they go through November and then all the way through, the rest of the year with all the saints' days and saints' prayers and biographies. And then they have the commons, just like in the one volume. And then let's see what happens after the commons, because now they don't have all that extra. Oh, the office for the dead. And then Appendix 1, Canticles and Gospel Readings for Vigils, when you do the office of readings. So this whole appendix, we will talk about another time. But this is when you can do, it's fun. Anyway, this makes the office of readings longer, but it's, and you can only do it for special occasions, but it's fun. It gives you a whole extra, 3 Psalms to do, or Canticles and Psalms, a mix. And then, and then it'll give you a gospel reading and stuff. So then you'd end up doing 3 readings altogether for the office of readings, 3 longer ones. And so that's kind of cool. Oh, I did just think of something else I want to tell you. The difference between the 1 volume and the 4 volume is, in the 1 volume, they abbreviated so many things. I think they felt bad. So the readings that you get a little scripture reading, from an epistle or an Old Testament book of the Bible every day during morning prayer and evening prayer. Well, every hour of the day you get that too. After your psalmody, you have just an additional scripture reading, and then you have a period of silence after, and then a response read. Okay. But in the 1 volume, the readings are like twice as long a lot of days as what you get in the 4 volume. So the 4 volume has, the full expanded office of readings. So you're getting way more like scripture and stuff if you're doing the office of readings. But I think to supplement that, they would have like, it's the same reading, but then they would add like 4 more verses from that same scripture passage that would just follow it in here. So anyway, that's kind of funny, but you know what? Throwing them a bone, I guess, because they don't have everything in this book. So you get a little more scripture at those times. Anyway. And then there's that one appendix is for doing vigils for the office of readings on fun days. And then appendix 2, shorter forms of the intercessions to be used at evening prayer. If for some reason you wanted to do a briefer version of that. Oh, I heard a weird sound, sorry. And then appendix 3, additional prayers, like final prayers, if you want options and things like that. Appendix 4, they have the religious poetry. And then they have the same, here, look. Ooh. They have like a small, appendix 5 has like a small supplement that's just saints celebrated in the Diocese of the United States. So these wouldn't be universally used, but in our country, they're printing this appendix for us. In other countries, they would print an appendix for their own local saints. So it's got like Our Lady of Guadalupe, Elizabeth Ann Seton, who else? Blessed John Neumann, just a few of those. So that's kind of cool. And then indexes of Psalms, index of Canticles, index of biblical readings, of non-biblical readings. And these indexes are a lot longer because they have a lot more readings in this book than in the 1 volume. And then index of hymns alphabetically. So if you're like, I want to do this one hymn, but it's not the one that's printed today for this hour, then you can go hunt and find it and do it. What else? And then looks like, alphabetical index of celebrations, but they're not all there. I don't know why. It looks too short. But anyway, I mean, this index is in the other one too. So, and then the acknowledgements. So they don't have that whole section of like music for the Liturgy of the Hours. That might be in another volume of the 4 volume set, but I actually think it's kind of unique to the 1 volume now that I'm thinking of it. So yeah, it's another one of those bonus things they threw in there like, hey, if you want to sing this, here's how. So that's another thing the 1 volume has that the 4 volume doesn't. But, it just really depends on you. How much you're hoping to pray. If you just want to go for the gold and have everything at your fingertips, basically get the 4 volume. If you want something good to start out with, like for family prayer, and because these books are not cheap. I mean, they're like over $30. I don't know what they're right now, what they are, but I think they were like $35 back when we first bought our set for one of these. And they also have a large print edition of the 1 volume and of the 4 volume. So like these are the large print of the 4 volume. They're huge, but they also have a small print that's like this size of each of the 4 volumes. So this is a small print. This is the large print. So if you're going blind and you want to still be able to know what you're reading, there's options. One thing I don't like about the large print of the 1 volume, maybe they changed it, but in the old days, when I was first learning this, the old days, Anyway, they have like, the red and the black. The red really helps you understand like the instructions and the titles of things and stuff that you don't read out loud. But in the large print, everything was in black. They didn't have red. And I was like, that's confusing. I don't know. I thought it was confusing, but it doesn't make or break anything. Also, the large print of the 1 volume didn't have musical notation. I didn't notice that it was missing anything else, but that bugged me. I was like, I'm definitely going for the little one. I'll use a magnifying glass if I have to. Anyway, so the 4 volume set is definitely pricier. So if you're praying alone and you want the whole works, get the 4 volume. But if you're maybe starting out for your family and everybody's going to have their own book, or 2 people can share, then you would probably want to just start with this, and you can get a lot done with the 1 volume. So it definitely is a good place to start. That's my spiel on introducing you to the Christian prayer books, the 1 volume and the 4 volume. And I'll do another video, hopefully very soon, about the method of praying each of the hours. Maybe I'll do a video each or something like that so that I can explain the names of things and how you go through, each hour carefully, and like, if you're flipping to something, where you flip to, and what you repeat, and also the postures, like standing, sitting, making the sign of the cross. There are certain things, that are required by the instruction. If you want to be very, like by the book. I mean, again, the faithful aren't obligated to pray these hours or these offices. So it's really just kind of whatever you can do. But if you want to be really like, do it the way it's supposed to be done, I can tell you all that, or even things that are traditional, like bowing at the waist during the glory bees. Whenever you pray those, that's, a very venerable custom. And some religious communities and people still do that, or they, but that's not required, not even by the instruction of the Liturgy of the Hours. So, but I don't know. It's just, I like doing all the things, all the postures, standing and sitting, and like when to pause and have silence, and so we can talk about all of that soon. So thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the video. I know it was a lot of information. Again, if you have questions or specific things that you want me to cover in future videos on the Christian prayer, Liturgy of the Hours, please drop me a note in the comments below, and like, subscribe, whatever floats your boat, and we will see you soon. Thank you so much, and God bless you. Bye.